The SciComm Collective acknowledges the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of the lands we study, write and record on, and that their sovereignty was never ceded. Hello and welcome to the SciComm Collective.
Different useful knowledge in different areas.
The joy is sharing it.
Making science accessible.
The ignored final step of the scientific method.
Every different perspective.
Science is culture.
The SciComm Collective brings science and science communication to you.
Hello, I'm Anne Grand, and I had the pleasure of being invited to be an interviewee on the SciComm Collective's podcast. I used to be a lecturer in science communication here at UWA and still an active researcher in engaged research. But being a curious person, I wanted to know why. So the SciComm Collective very kindly sat down with me and talked a little bit about the whys and wherefores of the SciComm Collective. So what's the background? Why the podcast series?
The SciComm Collective?
The SciComm Collective.
Well, it was an idea of a group of Masters and PhD students of science communication this year, kind of inspired by the Grand Challenges, who have a MAD Impacts grant, and the MAD stands for Make a Difference. And that's to do with meeting some of the university's sustainability goals that are related to the UN sustainability goals. And the two that the university focuses on are climate change and a more just and equitable world. And we felt that science communication, it almost goes across both of these, but also the whole more just and equitable world idea is where we see science communication going. And so we felt like we would love to be able to do an additional thing, really, that was us students talking about science communication, how useful it was.
Also, like the fact that this is students' perspectives.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a professor lecturing about something. It's from what we've lived, from what we've learned, and how we see it from our different perspectives, since we have so many different backgrounds in the group, in the collective.
Yeah. But we also wanted to do this extra thing about equity for the students and accessibility and us being able to access and do things as well. And Grand Impacts came back and said, yeah, sure, we will support you to develop this as an idea.
I'm interested in you calling it a SciComm Collective. That's a really intriguing idea. Because, there are thousands, millions of podcasts out there. So you've got to think about sustainability of, it's no use producing just 6 episodes and then it running into the sand. So I'm interested in this. Tell me about the collective, how that's working.
Well, one thing we did is we looked at other podcasts that do science communication. There's, for example, Let's Talk SciComm that comes out of Uni of Melbourne. And they say that their reason is because science isn't finished until it's communicated. Personally, I think that it is more than that. I think science is never finished, actually.
If it were, we'd be a very sad world.
So, we looked at why have other podcasts called themselves these things? What is their purpose? But also, we then came to this idea that we were this group as well that were doing it. And we wanted to talk about the different people that do science communication and are involved in and learn from and find it useful and all the different ways that science communication happens, because science communication isn't one thing. It's so many things. It is so interdisciplinary.
It's interdisciplinary, it's transdisciplinary, it's practical and pragmatic. It's also theoretical and research-based.
It's really hard to pin down.
Which is good.
And everybody that does science communication
does it differently.
Does it for different reasons. They have different identities.
Definitely. Yeah. I like that you talked about the sustainability, that the collective is an ongoing thing that's not only for us, but students in the future.
Yeah, we like this as an idea that it's about bringing together lots of different people. And that's why we have students discussing some of the theoretical things that we've learned, and also why we do interviews with practitioners, why we interview people that do different careers in SciComm. And we're just trying to bring in lots of different ways to think about science communication.
I think that's really important to have that range of expertise. But I was also trying to sort of get at these things aren't easy to set up and how it's working as a collective.
We've learned a lot.
That was the hard part.
Yeah. I think that was a big thing, was like the purpose was for us to learn how to create a podcast.
Yeah.
And we have been doing a lot of learning. And some of that was that we really needed to maybe get a bit of additional training from other places than we thought that we needed. At the beginning, we kind of had this idea that we could go forth and learn without putting the structures in place to help ourselves do that. And that's okay, because we've now learned how to do that. And you were talking about sustainability. As we keep going forward, everything that we've learned is then going to be able to be built upon. So, yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of a real world thing, isn't it? That and a really valuable lesson for any other students that through your podcasting is that some of it is about the structures. Some of it is about building the frame that you can then work within. You know, we can all sit around and talk.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make a sustainable engagement pathway.
That's right. There's people that have studied podcasts and why people do podcasting in Australia, and they're saying that they love to talk, so they're just going to do it online and keep doing it. Another reason might be to supplement the teaching. That is actually a reason that's been given for other podcasts about science communication. They're saying that they can't actually teach everybody that wants to do it, so they're going to put it in a podcast.
Yeah. Crystal and Zhai was a Masters of Science Communication, finished maybe last year, the year. So, yes, she did her research on podcasters, Australian podcasters.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing they said was, it's cheap.
Yeah.
We can get into it really easily. And we love talking anyway, so let's do this.
Might as well.
And we wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
We wanted to do something that was student-led and all of our ideas coming together within that. But then making it accessible for lots of people means opening it up to various ideas.
But that's a really good point to make, that, you know, different people in the collective even want to know different things.
Yes. And that's why it's really great then, because we can ask those different questions and we can approach with all these different perspectives and try to bring them together. But those structures and the way of doing it has been a big learning curve.
So I've definitely have never done editing or writing show notes or worrying about making a podcast. This is the start of it. Yeah.
It's been a challenge.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Editing.
But that's okay, because, I actually think that when you have that, and you've needed to invest more and you've had to really build internal motivation to keep going with something.
And thinking about it in terms of the grand challenges, a challenge is precisely that. You challenge yourself to do something that you maybe haven't done before. The university is challenging its students to achieve something that they haven't achieved before. And an important part of that for the next stage of the grand challenges is people like your collective reflecting on the process. Because I think one of the things science communication that engaged research does is to foreground the process rather than communication being something, you know, you were saying science isn't finished until it's communicated. A, science is never finished. And B, why is communication at the end?
Yes.
I think what you're saying here is that communication is a process that happens through the work. And that's what you're foregrounding through your work on the podcast, which is really important.
Thank you for saying that. It's great to have somebody articulating it too. Because, sometimes coming up with the right words to describe things.
Sure, yeah.
It takes time and reflection. But, that's what we were hoping, that this could be something that our listeners are interested in science and science communication, but that they can come away with maybe a little bit more as well about the whys of it.
I think that's really important, because it's too easy to present science as this big shiny ball of wonderfulness.
Yes.
That just reflects back at itself. As researchers, we all know that inside that big shiny ball of wonderfulness is a big mass of dynamism and tentativeness and questions that don't quite get answered. And actually opening that up is being honest about the process of research and saying, this is what we're all in the middle of.
Yeah.
That's super important.
Yeah, and I think it's important for students to hear this.
It's very important, that there's nothing finished, there's nothing finite, there's nothing polished.
I think it's really valuable that we're talking about what SciComm is and all the theories behind it, but at the same time, we're interviewing people that, it's doing SciComm in their own ways to see how we see it in theory and how we can also see it in practice.
Yeah. During my interview with Eugenie, she also mentioned that people
are not familiar with science communication would have like different expectations for science communicators. And often what we learn at school does not like 100% meet those expectations. So it's like constantly learning new things and new stuff like every day.
But that's exciting.
Yeah.
You're part of that unfinishedness.
Yes.
It's challenging but fun.
And it is something that there's no one right way to do it.
Yeah.
You can ask those questions. Questions are so important. Things that occur to us as we're listening to something or we're reading something, and that sort of pops up in your mind and go, hang on, do they actually mean that? It's okay to be uncertain and unfinished because that's what matters.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I think
another part was we wanted to do something that showed how UWA, science communication, thinks and what we represent in this idea of how do we work? What is this about even as well?
Like this is showing UWA SciComm and UWA SciComm student and what that means. And
it's useful because students who are looking into, maybe I'd like to join this to do SciComm at UWA. This is what they're doing. That's so cool. I'll join now.
Yeah, that is important because there's not many places that do science communication.
There aren't many places that do it like this. And I think you have an amazing leader in terms of public engagement. She is such a clever researcher in her own right. The way you do things, the leadership you have, the way you approach things, they shape the philosophy, they frame the approach, they give UWA science communication a unique personality.
Yeah.
And that UWA science communication will be different to Melbourne, will be different to ANU in Canberra. And that's okay. We can all have different flavours of the work we're doing, but UWA has a unique personality and a unique approach, and that's important.
Yeah, and we have students that want to talk about it.
Yes.
And that's also
and are
cool.
encouraged to talk about it. Students are part of the enterprise, part of the way it's done here. Many of the students are postgraduates, or maybe even mature students who've been away and done something else and come back to science communication or recognise public engagement with their work as an important part of what they do. And that's part of the unique flavour.
We also have a really nice diversity of students from lots of different cultural backgrounds.
That is really nice, yes. No, that is super important, yes. Engaging with different ways of knowing and respecting different ways of knowing.
And having a collective is, in its way, representing that as how it happens also in the landscape of science communication.
And in the landscape of science.
Yes. Does that kind of help? Does that answer for you a little bit about the motivations for this podcast?
I'm always interested in why people do what they want to do. That's the beginning question, isn't it? It's no use saying podcasts are good. Let's do a podcast. We have to say what matters about podcasting.
I mean, honestly, we do. We wanted to do a thing. Students wanted to do a thing, but it's evolved.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah,
because I think it needed that reflection about why, and there was a bit of a incentive for us to start, and then within that, we've been able to develop this idea of what that means, which is emergent.
Yeah,
which is great.
And
it's good to have done that. I think that some of the work on podcasts shows that people don't do that. And so it's nice to
don't think about them. Certainly Crystal's work has opened up a kind of gap in the strategic elements of podcasting. Podcasters, we did a big interview series with them, and they were lovely people and they were really excited and they loved their podcasting. But there was a bit of a gap in the why podcast area and why podcasting is the tool that can help us achieve what we want to achieve.
Yeah.
Why does podcasting help you achieve your purpose?
Yeah.
Was a bit of a gap.
Yeah, and I think that the evolution of this project, like how we started, it's been just a couple months and it is just starting and it already has changed. Like how we started, this is just a thing we want to do. And now we're really thinking about it. And I don't know where that was going.
No, I like that. I think I agree. I think you're right. I think we wanted to do something. We were excited to have a go at doing something. And by aligning it with grand challenges as well, it meant that we knew that what we were picking to do should have impact and makes it more meaningful and hopefully also means that it's more likely to keep going.
Yeah.
I think that's the importance of examining public engagement, engaged research, science communication as an emergent and developing field. we have our theories, we have our questions, we have our ideas. It's not just something that serves science. It is something in its own right as a discipline and as a field of research.
Yeah.
Like any other field of research, everybody who comes into it has their own question, makes that little contribution to knowledge, takes it that little bit further. I think you can actually make a feature of that.
Yeah.
That, science communication doesn't sit on its own in this. It's not a little walled garden.
It's not.
It's not something that you put on the end, but it's something that the value of it emerges from the person that you are and the questions that you have.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to hopefully see that with the SciComm Collective, depending on what people do and who we talk to and what we discuss, and that can be informed by interests. And we have many interviews with each other, little snippets about why we do science communication and what we think. And we will be sharing those over the season and online. It's really great to be able to hear where different people are coming from.
Sure.
But there's also some really nice reflections from people saying, I expect this to change, which is nice as well. It shows that we already know it's important to think about why we're doing what we're doing. And it can be different, and that is okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely okay, yes.
And that's pretty cool.
Love it. That's really nice. It's like a puzzle that each one of us has this little piece. When we put it together, it becomes this beautiful thing.
That's why we're called a collective.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was really helpful. I mean, seriously, as a person in engaged research, my first question is always why. So thank you for explaining a little bit of the why.
Thank you for asking, I guess. Or thank you for the interview. Yeah. Thank you for coming in and being our interviewer today.
Poacher turned gamekeeper.
Thanks for listening. Find us online at thescicommcollective.com. That's com with 2 M's. Questions or comments about today's episode? Get in touch on Instagram at the SciComm Collective. The SciComm Collective is supported by UWA's Grand Challenges Impact Grant.